Quincy Lynn, Samantha Smith, Malaya Valenzuela, and last in the ring we have Riley Henniger. This is Class 1 for FFA Prospect Steers.
Well, a good class of them to get us going here in our FFA Prospect Steer Show. Some really good discussion and some good give and take up on our top end. The silver steer that's going to go ahead and start us off, he's pretty overwhelming in regard to power, and that's where I like him. He's big-ribbed, he's stout, That steer has got a ton of muscle in him, and I like that about him. And he's just burlier than the rest of them that are coming in behind him. And standing still, I still think that steer's got a nice look to him from the profile. Now, if I'm going to change that one, whenever we get him in motion, he's just a little awkward in the way that he handles his hip and his hind leg, and I wish we could see him just a little sounder there in the design of his rear skeleton. But standing still, that steer's the best looking, and he is by some margin the stoutest one that we've got in here to go ahead and lead off. The steer that's coming out here in second that the young lady's got right here in front of me, I do like that one's extension, and I like his hip design better than the cattle that sit on either side of him. He's a little longer, he's a little leveler out of his hip. He sits better in the design of his hock and his rear ankle than the one that goes out right ahead of him. I think for me, that steer just needs a little more time on feed and a little more maturity. I think will help him more than anything, because he gets out horse really of our top three. He's probably the lightest muscled steer of our initial trio that just needs a little more time to bulk up and power up as he continues to stay on feed. The one that's coming out here next does have just a shade more muscle in him. And whenever you get around him behind these cattle, he's built wide, he's square hipped, he's got a nice square back in him. I do like that about the steer from a stoutness standpoint. For me, we need to balance him up just a little bit different, especially in the design of his hip and his hind leg. He wants to get a little off in his hip structure. He's got too much extra set to his hind leg and a little curl in the way that he sets it up underneath him. I'd like to change him there a little bit in the design and build of his rear skeleton. As we work on down, here's a big Charolais calf. It's big outlined. He's extended. I like his lateness and maturity. For me, he's kind of like the one that goes out in second, probably even a little more extreme. For me, just needs some more time to bulk up. He comes off a little harder rib. He comes off a little flatter whenever you get in behind these cattle. Here's kind of the same story with the black steer that we have coming out next. Big-bodied steer that's a little frailer in his bone work and a little bit flatter from a dimension standpoint. We need to power him up no matter where that you study him. And same thing with the red calf that we're going to go ahead and round out our class with. By far the least mature steer in here and the lightest weight one. Just needs to be stoutened up. We need to see a little more power in that guy to work him up the line in here in a tough class. Good way to get us going. Congratulations to those exhibitors.
Winner of the class is Samantha Smith. Second place was Riley Henniger. Also receiving purple was Quincy Lynn. Blue ribbons to Peniel Nimnich, Mava Cortice, and Malaya Valenzuela. Malia Valenzuela, excuse me. Okay, this will be Class 2 FFA prospect steers. First in the ring, we have J.C. Cox. All right, thanks, Mark. What bar was that? This would be Olivia McGregor. Then Quincy Lynn. Haley Howard. Cashley Brown. Olivia McGregor, second steer. Katie Bellis. And rounding out the class, Austin Brash. This is FFA Prospect Steers, Class 2.
he's great in his lines. He's great in his top line. He's great in his lower body. You get up on top of that steer, he's probably got just a bit more impressive turn coming right out of the back of his shoulder. He's a little further along in terms of his condition. I forgot about that. We're going to go. Sorry, I forgot about our ribbons there, but this is a really sharp-looking calf, and I like his image, and I like his lines from the profile. He's got a great turn and shape up high. For me, I question on this steer if he's stout enough legged, and you study him of our initial trio, he's probably the smallest footed, he's probably the frailest in his bone work. I could bulk him up just a little bit through the center portion of his body and just see him just a little bit bigger in his rib cage in relation to the two cattle that are on either side of him. But I think if everything goes right for that steer moving forward, I think there's a lot of upside potential in him. The gray steer that's coming out here next is another one that I like. His stoutness, his boldness, his ruggedness is good, and he's really quite a bit stouter than the one that goes out right ahead of him. And this steer, he's all there whenever you get behind him. Big rib and a big old square hip in him. That steer's got a tremendous amount of muscle, and he doesn't hurt for that. Standing still, I like the look and I like the design of him. Now, before he takes off, you could probably see that he's just a little too straight up front, and he's wanting to come over at his knee just a little bit. That steer, whenever we get him in motion, he just doesn't handle his hind leg quite good enough to go ahead and get around our initial pair that goes out ahead of him, but that's still a really, really nice calf. The red steer that's coming out here next, he's got a better hind leg. He's a little bit sounder, but he's quite a bit further behind in his body. He's quite a bit further behind in his muscle shape and dimension. That's where he needs just a little more time to bulk up. I think better days are ahead for that one because he comes off just a little skinnier, a little greener, and a little bit flatter than the initial three that go out ahead of him. Big red calf that's coming out next, I like his extension, I like his muscle, and I like his bone. He's just a little bit coarser in the way that he's made for his extra frame. He probably needs just a shot more depth of body, and whenever we get him in motion, he's just a little tentative and a little rigid in his structure. The orange roan calf that we have coming out next, that's another one that's really long-bodied. He's smooth built. He's nice in his structure. We need to see him powered up and give him more shape and muscularity all the way through. Same thing with the cattle that we're going to round out our class with. The young lady's gray steer just needs more body, needs a softer look to him, and the young lady's Hereford steer that's going to round out our class. I was telling her whenever she came in, this steer's got two speeds. He's either stopped or he's going really fast, and there's no in between. And I think that steer, again, just needs a little better attitude and needs a shot more muscle to be more competitive here in a tough class. Those exhibitors did a great job. Congratulations to them.
Winning the class was J.C. Cox. Second place was Cashley Brown. Also earning purple ribbons was Katie Bellis. Earning blue ribbons are Olivia McGregor and Austin Brash. And red ribbons go to Quincy Lynn, Haley Howard, and Olivia McGregor. Folks, we're lucky enough to have Sunrise Livestock Services here today. Our photographers, there's one in each one of the show rings taking pictures of your showmen and their animals. They'll be here all the way through Saturday. Go out onto the Junior Livestock Show website and click on the link, and you can go in, you can get these pictures for free. So we certainly appreciate Sunrise Livestock Services for helping us out. Next in the ring, this will be Class 3 FFA Prospect Steers. Adeline McIntosh, Kendall Denny, Bodie Schweiger, Case Brown, Ainsley Imler, and Hallie Howard. This is Class 3 FFA Prospect Steers.
Another good class of them that we've got here. I think a lot of give and take up amongst our top end here, and I think there's some differences in these cattle, and each one of them represents a little different advantage out here, honestly. The steer that's going to go ahead and win, he doesn't win because he's the heaviest muscle, and honestly, if we're going to change part of him, I'd probably like to see him just a little stouter and with more shape, but the reason that he wins for me and does so, honestly, pretty easily, that is the big-bodied, sound-structured, really easy-feeding kind of a steer that's got a really nice look of balance to him from the profile. He's sound, he's good moving, his rib cage is incredible. You've done a nice job with presentation on him. He's really fresh in his hair coat, and you do a good job showing him as well. Now, the steer that's coming out here in second, I think there's a lot of upside potential in him. He comes off a little greener, a little harder bodied than the one that we lead off with, but I do think his look up front is nice. That steer's got a lot of muscle whenever you get down his top and in behind him. He doesn't hurt for shape, and I like that about him, and I like his foot, and I like his bone, and I like his stoutness. A feature back off to the side of him, he's kind of going through that little awkward growth stage right now where he's wanting to go up and out, and he needs to fill in just a little more through the center portion of his body because he is just a little harder ribbed than the cattle that sit on either side of him. I like the rib cage, and I like the soundness of this steer that's coming out here in three. Of our top three, though, he's probably the plainest from a balance standpoint, and he's probably a little greener in terms of his rib and his muscle shape. You get right up on top of him, I could square him up and power him up all the way down his back and out of his hip. As we work on down, black steer that's got some rib and some body to him. He's sound structured, and he's real easy feeding. Needs some more bone and stoutness to him because he is the frailest one that we have here in our initial set, and you could probably power him up and stouten him up just a little out of his hip whenever you get in behind him. Here's a real stout one coming next. Needs to be just a little sounder in the way that he goes out of his hip and his hind leg. Same thing, structure on our last place here has got to be just a little bit better, especially up front. We've got to square him up in his shoulder and knee and see him with just a little more flexibility, a little more function to his skeleton. Congratulations to our class. All those exhibitors did a great job.
Winning the class was Ainsley Imler. Second place was Kendall Denny. Blue ribbons going to Adeline McIntosh and to Haley Howard. And red ribbons going to Bodie Schweiger and Case Brown. Folks, we got a couple of young ladies out here that have been helping us out today. Maddie Dixon, who's one of our interns. Maddie showed here at Junior Livestock Show, went off to college, graduated, came back, and now she's one of our interns. The other young lady is Natalie Luce from ADNA. She's an FFA state officer. She's the FFA state reporter. They've been out here working all day, helping us out. Why don't you give them a nice round of applause for giving us a hand today. Don't forget, we have Pee Wee Showmanship after the FFA market steers are done tonight. And also, don't forget the barbecue across the way. Nordic Smoke's putting on a great barbecue. If you don't have tickets yet, make sure you go over and get a good meal tonight when this is all said and done with. Okay, next into the ring, this would be Class 4 FFA Prospect Steers. We have in the ring Loden Gardner, Lucas Main, Grayson Slaybaugh, Molly Warren, Ainsley Imler, Kaylee Smith, and Kane Geddes. This is Class 4 FFA Prospect Steers.
down, this steer that's coming out here in 2, I thought as you compared him to the cattle that are coming in behind him, I thought he was quite a bit stouter than the one coming in 3. I thought he was quite a bit sounder than the one coming in 4. So he became the one that was the next best balanced and the next most complete in relation to our class winner. Now, as we compare him to our class winner, he's not as elite in his look up front. He's a little plain there in terms of his sheath, and he's probably not quite as attractive in the way that he sits down in his hind leg. But like I said, I did like his extra power in relation to the one that's coming out in 3. 3 and 4 was close, and we've got one of our top 4. This one's probably the plainest in his shape and the flattest, but I also thought he was a good-bodied, smooth pattern steer that was a little bit better in his structure than the one that was coming in behind him. So in relation to the pair of cattle that go out ahead of you, he needs to be a little bit stouter to go ahead and run with those just a little bit harder. But in comparison to the one in behind him, I thought he was sounder and better in his structure. Here's one that does have more muscle, and whenever you get right up on top of him, I like his shape, I like his spread, and I like his stoutness and his muscle dimension. Whenever you get in behind him, that steer, really his structure off both ends, we need to change up just a bit. He's a little open, he's a little straight in his shoulder. He wants to get just a bit straighter in his knee, or a bit forward in his knee as you study him there. Whenever we get him in motion, his hock and his rear pastern of our top 4 is the most rigid. We need to see him a little bit sounder. As we work on down, here's a big-bodied steer that gets a little plainer from a design standpoint, a little rounder out of his hip, a little plainer in his shape. Probably one of the smoother made steers is the young ladies that's coming out here next. We just need more bone, we need more muscle, and we need more stoutness in him to go ahead and work up the line. And here's a real stout, heavy bone one of the young men's that's going to go ahead and round out our class. For me, that steer's just probably not quite good enough in his feet and leg structure to go ahead and work up. That's probably my biggest issue with him. I'd like to see him a little sounder to go ahead and work him up the line. But a good class of them there. Congratulations to those exhibitors on a nice job.
Winning the class is Ainsley Imler. Second place was Lucas Main. Also receiving purple were Molly Warren and Kane Gaddis. Receiving blue ribbons were Logan Gardner, Grayson Slaybaugh, and Kaylee Smith. This will be Class 5 and our final class of FFA prospect steers. In the ring, we have Alyssa Williams, Jack Baser, Emmett Niviton, Warren Rep, Brody Driver, Cade Meacham, and Lucas Main. This is Class 5 and our final drive of FFA prospect steers.
We've got another good class of them as we finish out here in our FFA prospect division and here in our heavyweight class. I do think the guesswork's kind of taken out of these steers because they're getting pretty close or getting edging up there a little closer to a more acceptable market weight than those lighter weight cattle that we had. And I think a good set of them. And our class winner, pretty clear cut. I'm pretty quick to find that one to go ahead and lead us off. I love that one's moderation. I love his body. That thing's got a real big-bodied, easy-feeding, fat steer look to him. I like his power. I like his dimension to go along with it. Even though he's probably got a little more sheath and a little more leather up front, that steer still, I think, is attractive whenever you study him off to the profile. Now, if we're going to get real critical of him, maybe not perfect in his hind leg set. He's almost got just a little extra set to his hind leg in the way that he gets outside of himself just a little bit from behind. We could change him there, but still, nice calf. That's a pretty clear-cut winner. As we work on down, I thought the next one that probably resembled the most things about our class winner was the one that's coming out here into good-looking, big outline steer. This steer is a little later in his maturity pattern. He's a little more elevated, and he's got a little more stretch up front, and I like that about this guy. Not as bold, not as big rib, not as stout whenever you get in behind him. And I think really comparison to the two steers that are on either side of him, I don't think there's quite as much shape in him as the steers that sit in 1 and 3. The smoke steer that's coming out next, I like his muscle shape. And this is just a good, honest feeding steer. He's good shaped up top. He's got a big hip in him. I like that turn that he's got to his lower quarter and stifle. I like that one's bone, and I like his feature. Get right off to the side of him, he's a little harder right there and tighter in his heart and his flank as you study him from there back. He's just a nickel tighter right there in the way that he sets down from behind in his hock too. I'd like to loosen him up in his rear skeleton. As we work on down, standing still, you got a real chubby one that's coming out next. And I mean that in a good way because whenever you talk about one that's wide and bold and stout and he's big topped and he's thick-ended, and that steer looks like he's going to be a really, really nice one in regard to quality grade potential because he's putting on some fat and he's looking really good in regard to this degree of finish, just not quite sound enough really, especially out of his hind leg. He wants to dish his loin, get up in his tailhead. He gets really awkward in the way that he sits down from behind. Here's a steer that's coming next, one that's probably just a little more extended, a little smoother up front. I'd like to change his hind leg set just a little bit, and he doesn't come with as much muscle as that one that goes out ahead of him. Here's one that's sure got plenty of muscle. I like his body type. His hip and his hind leg kind of limits him on down the line. He's got to be a little bit sounder, and the one that we're going to round out our class with has got to be just a little stouter whenever you get in behind him to work up the line here in a tough class. But I thought a good way to round us out here in our prospect steers, those exhibitors did a great job getting their cattle presented out here. If you would, help me in congratulating them and putting your hands together as they work their way out.
Winning the class was Alyssa Williams. Second place was Cade Meacham. Also earning purple was Warren Rep. Blue ribbons going to Jack Baser, Emmett Niveton, and Lucas Main. We're going to bring back all our purple ribbons winners, and we're going to bring them into our final draft of championship prospect steers. All right, this is our final drive of FFA Prospect Steers. This is our championship drive. Coming into the ring is Sam Smith, J.C. Cox, Ainsley Imler, and Alyssa Williams. Those are our number 1 purples. Our number 2s are Riley Henniger, Cashley Brown, Kendall Denny, Lucas Main, and Cade Meacham. This is your FFA Prospect Championship Drive.
Our FFA prospects show has been really good, and I really like our set of class winners and second places as we get them out here. As I was working through those classes, I thought it was going to be a really nice lineup, and it comes together really, really good. Here started off with a really stout one and a really bold one there that comes out of our lightweight class that's still really nice looking at the standstill from the side. Limiting factor in him, hind leg maybe needs to go just a little bit better whenever we get him in motion, but standing still, I guarantee you he'll give the rest of them all they want. And I do like that calf, and you do a good job getting him presented out here. The calf that wins Class 2, I'm telling you, I really, really like this calf. And whenever you start him at the ground, his bone and his foot and his feature is good. That steer has a really, really nice hind leg. And whenever we get him in motion, even though he kind of acts like a knucklehead and he's deadheaded and he doesn't want to work with you very good, that steer is very high quality. I like his stoutness. I like his balance. And whenever you get up on top of him, like we talked about in class, that was one of the skinniest calves that was in that class. But I'm telling you, I think he got a real good one there that's got a lot of upside potential. I like his just his bone column and his forearm, and he's got a real stout mug on him. The way that it ties into his shoulder, I think, is good at the top there. That steer's body length is good. His balance is really, really good from the side. I'm serious. I think that calf is very good. He's a little skinny. His presentation and his hair coat's not maybe quite where it needs to be. His attitude's not very good, and I think there's some things about him that are just a little bit rougher cut and maybe not just as refined and as polished. But I think that calf right there, he's got a lot of good to him, and I like him a bunch. The steer that comes out of that Class 3, you talk about a big-bodied, good-feeding, smooth-made steer that's really nice balance. A little frailer in his structure, and he needed just a shot more muscle, and we talked about that's not why he won that class. He won that class because he was the best balanced, he was the soundest, he was the best-bodied steer that really, really has a nice look to him. The steer that wins that next class, you've done a great job with both of these cattle. This young lady's done a great job presenting them. They're fresh, they're dialed in, they look like they're ready to come show today, and this is a really nice steer. Got a great look to him from the side, neat up front, opens up into a big rib cage. That steer's got muscle, he's got stoutness, he's got dimension. Whenever you get him behind the lineup, he's sound enough in his structure to go along with that as well. I think whenever you talk about a steer that's just real solid everywhere, that's been really nicely presented, you've done a great job with that. The steer that comes out of that last class, moderation, body shape, dimension, I think really kind of are words that really fit him well. He's as stout and as bold and as big-bellied as anything that we have out here in the lineup. And if you've followed me today in the heifer show, in the steer show earlier, I like him big-ribbed, and I like him husky, and I like him stout, and he fits that. Now, we talked about him, little leather up front, little more sheath, little weird in his hind leg, how he gets outside of himself, and so if we're going to change him, that's where you do it. And so I think for me, as I study these class winners, it comes down to a two-horse race out here, and honestly, I like them both, and I like them both a bunch. And I'm going to look at them one more time. We'll select your champion in reserve, and I think we're going to do a top 5 again. Is that correct? In the prospect steers, just like we did earlier. And again, just like our 4-H show, I think all 5 of these are going to be extra, extra good. And congratulations to our second places over there on the far side. We talked about them in class, and a really high-quality set of cattle to back up our class winners. Around ringside, if you would, let's congratulate these young people on doing a great job. They brought a great set of cattle out here on our FFA show.
And your grand champion prospect steer is J.C. Cox. And your reserve champ, Ainsley Imler. Third place is Alyssa Williams. Fourth place would be Cashley Brown. And fifth place goes to Cade Meacham. All right, folks, put your hands together for these young showmen for our prospect steer class. It'll be just a little bit here. We're going to get some pictures of our champions in front of the backdrop, and then we will move into our FFA market classes coming right up. We again want to thank our sponsors of our buckles for the 4-H and FFA prospect steers, sponsored by Dixon Land and Livestock joint venture. For our 4-H and FFA market steer buckles, sponsored by Northwest Feeds. Our 4-H market heifer buckles were sponsored by 4W Ranch, and our Supreme heifer buckles were sponsored by 4W Show Feeds. Let these people know we appreciate all their help in giving us support with the belt buckles. Don't forget showmen at the end of the day. If you want to do a breeder's pen of 3, get a hold of your barn superintendents. We are going to do, if we have enough participation, we are going to do a breeder pen of 3. All right, ladies and gentlemen, this is Class 1 FFA market steers. First in the ring was Alexandria Bolus from Medical Lake FFA, Eli Gursky from Liberty FFA, Olivia Wicks, Reardon FFA, Olivia's second calf, Olivia Wicks, Reardon FFA, Cade Meacham from Connell, Ryson Soliday, Reardon FFA, and Colby Ledgerwood, Pomeroy FFA. This is Class 1 of FFA market steers.
Well, a good class of them as we get rolling here in our market, showing our FFA side, and I think a really nice class. And there's probably a pair of them that sort up for me just because they're the two bolder, stouter, more muscular cattle that we've got in here. And the young man's market heifer, and if I'm not mistaken, I think this is our only market heifer that we've got in our FFA show, so this will be our champion market heifer as well as your Class 1 winner that we have out here in our market beef show. I think this one, of the two stout power cattle that we've got out here that come in 1 and 2, this one for me, I like her skeleton, I like her design, and I like her balance better than the steer that's coming right in behind her. She's better chested. You get right in behind her. She's cleaner jointed. She's square in the way that she sits down from hock to ground. So, like I said, that one's got body, power, dimension, shape, and muscularity whenever you go in and get your hands on her, and couples that with a more balanced look and a better skeletal base to go ahead and lead us off. Now, the roan calf that's coming out here in 2, like we alluded to, bold-bodied and muscular, and I think this steer is stouter than the ones that are coming in behind him. In relation to our class winner, he's not as good in the angle of his shoulder. He's not as good in the set of his knee. You get right around him behind him, that calf's just a little coarser in his joint work, and he doesn't get out and flex his hind leg like the one that goes out ahead of him. So of the two stout cattle, that one ranks second in structure, build, and balance from the side. As we work on down, the young man that's coming out here in 3, I like this steer's rib and body, and I was thinking whenever I went in to handle this steer, he is putting a really nice coat of finish on him, and you're doing a good job feeding that steer, because he is probably, of our class that we've got out here, of our lightweight steers that could probably all use a little more time on feed. I thought this one was the closest to being ideal in terms of his finish, because he's really smooth and he's really uniform. Needs to be just a little stouter whenever you get right in behind him. He wants to duck his pins and get outside of himself, and a little short and choppy in his stride from behind in comparison to the two that go out ahead of him. But still, good calf there coming out in 3. I thought 3 and 4 were close, and the brockle face steer that's coming out here next, I do like that one in regard to his length and extension. His depth of body is good. He's another one that we need to change up in the build and design of his hind leg. You get right off to the side of him, he is just a little bit frailer in his structure. He wants to pull his hock in and get just a bit uncoordinated in the way he goes and utilizes his rear skeleton. But hey, good calf there. You're doing a good job with him. The old yellow baldy that's coming next, this is another steer that I like from the side. He's sound, he's big-bodied, he's easy feeding. This is just a good kind of cattle. Whenever you step off to the side of him, I like his function, I like his practicality. Get right up on top of him. I just don't know if he's got enough muscle in him to go ahead and get around some of those ones that go out ahead of you, because he's a little plain and nondescript in the shape working down his back. He's a little flatter out of his hip. We horse him up just a little bit from a muscle standpoint. We'll work him up the line a pretty good ways. As we work on down, here's a steer that's got a little more muscle in him whenever you get down his back. He's good over his rib. He's good over his loin. He's got some shape and some turn right there to his lower quarter. That steer's just not built as good from the side. He wants to roll up in his spine, duck his pins, get a little frailer in his hind leg, and get up underneath himself. Here's a steer that, again, sure has some shape down his back. We just need to see him a little softer bodied and a little more flexible in his rear leg design. For me, that steer needs to be just a nickel sounder to go ahead and work him out the line. But I thought a good class of them there. Those exhibitors did a good job getting their cattle presented out here. Congratulations to them all on a nice job.
Winning the class was Colby Ledgerwood. Second place was Olivia Wicks. Earning blue ribbons were Alexandria Bowles, Eli Gursky, Olivia Wicks, Cade Meacham, and Ryan Soliday. This will be Class 2 FFA market steers. First in the ring is Jack Baser from Pomeroy. Reagan Soliday from Reardon. Molly Warren from Pomeroy FFA. Lily Whitman from Reardon FFA. Gus Sixdorf from Liberty FFA. Grayson Slaybaugh from Pomeroy FFA. And rounding out the drive, Katie Bellis from Liberty FFA. This is Class 2 FFA market steers.
This class for me takes just a second to sort through, and you got that steer looking great right there. That is the first time that he's actually wanted to show for you out here. He just wanted to go that way instead of the other way. I think there's some good differences in this class and really some good discussion, and each one of these steers up on the top end I think have a lot of good to them, and they're just a little bit different. Now, I'll be the first one to admit this steer that whenever he wins, or class winner, whenever he comes in, it is not love at first sight because he's a little ugly colored. He's kind of patchy haired. He's maybe not as soft bodied, but once you get past that, that steer actually has a really neat look to him. He's good in his top line balance, and he's got a really nice hip in his hind leg. What was probably the most impressive thing to me about this steer, whenever you go in and get your hands on him, he is by some margin the most impressive in his shape. He is really expressive. He is very bold right out of the back of his shoulder over his rib. He's really stout out of his hips, so maybe he's not the deepest bodied one that we've got in class, but you get up on top of him, that steer's got a great shape. He's got a great turn to his hip and his quarter. I think that steer balances up with more look, and I like his hind leg set better than the one that's coming out here in 2. The steer that's coming out here in 2nd does drop with just a little more softness of body. I really like that about that steer. I like his foot, and I like his bone, and I like his stoutness of feature. A little bulkier in the base of his shoulder, not as good where his neck ties onto the top of his shoulder blade. Whenever we get him in motion, I'd like to free that steer up just a little bit in his hock, and whenever you go in and get your hands on him, even though I think he's got plenty of muscle, he's not as rolled up with as much shape as the one that we lead off with. So a lot of little things there that are going to keep another really nice gray steer there in 2nd. The young man that's coming out here in 3rd that's wheeling around, I like this steer standing still. I like his moderation. I like his boldness of body. He's another steer that's got plenty of muscle whenever you get up on top of him and whenever you get behind him. He's not wanting that great, and he's wanting to fight the halter just a little bit. I think kind of compounds on his problems that maybe he's just not perfect structured anyway. Up front, I'd like to lay him back in his shoulder and in his knee. He gets a little coarser in his tailhead, and the way that he sets down in his rear skeleton, he gets a little outside of himself, and he's a bit uncoordinated, I guess I would call it, in the build of his hip and his hind legs. So, and then the fact that he doesn't want to act right and wants to fight you just a little bit out here only kind of aids to that or kind of hurts that additionally. The steer that's coming out here next, I like his moderation. That's a big-bodied, easy-feeding kind of a steer. Again, you get up on top of him, he's got a good shape over his rib. For me, flattens out just a little bit to the base of his quarter. As you watch him go, he's a little frailer in his structure. He's smaller footed, and he wants to roll his ankle and just pop it every time. I'd like to set him down just a little softer at the surface. Here's a steer coming out next. He's got some width, and he's got some muscle. I wish he balanced out just a little nicer from the side. I'd like to peel some chest out of him. I'd like to proportion him out just a bit better as we study him from a balance standpoint. Big outline steer that's got plenty of depth coming out next that needs a shot more muscle, and then the red steer just needs to body down and get just a little softer look to him whenever you study him from the side. I thought a good class of them there. Congratulations to those exhibitors on a nice job.
Winning the class is Katie Bellis. 2nd is Molly Warren. Also earning purples are Jack Baser and Reagan Soliday. Earning blue ribbons are Grayson Slaybaugh, Gus Sixdorf, and Lily Whitman. All right, we're on to Class 3 FFA market steers. In the ring, we have Alyssa Williams, Mava Cortice, Kane Geddes, Kaiser Harris, Peter Minnick, Grayson Slaybaugh, and Kaiser Harris's 2nd steer. This is Class 3 FFA market steers.
think we've got another really nice class of them out here. I think there's probably, for me, a pair of steers that sort up just a little bit quicker than the rest of them, and I think they're both very nice. And I think both of them at the stand, you can talk some give and take in them. I landed on the clown colored steer to go ahead and lead off, and for me, as I circled him the one last time, I'm just a little more comfortable with his skeleton. Really, his top line and the design of his hip and his hind leg, it's better than the one that's coming out here in second. He's more consistent in his spine. He's better over his loin. He's better in the way that he comes, the length and levelness of his hip, the set of his hind leg. It's a pretty big advantage over the one that's coming out here in second. And still, once you get up on top of that calf, he's got a big rib in him. I like his boldness. I like his turn up eye. I like his depth and softness of body as you study him from the side, and I still think that steer has plenty of muscle to go along with it, and I do like his balance and I like his look. So for me, that one's just the most complete one, the best balanced one that's got the edge in top line, spine, hip, and hind leg in relation to the one that's coming out here in two. The steer that's coming out here in second, standing still, you could probably flop that pair if you wanted to, because this steer has a great look up front. He's the best handling steer in here whenever you go in and study that guy right in behind his shoulder. He's got a great shape and turn right over his rib as he meets up right behind his shoulder. He's got a big loin. He's got a big stout hip in him. Muscle is definitely not his problem. He's just a little tighter there in his heart and his forerib, but my biggest thing with this guy is once you set him in motion, he rolls up in his spine, dishes his loin. The way that he uses his hip and his hind leg, just not quite good enough for me. He wants to get just a little extra set to his hock. He never sets down in his rear pastern whenever you watch him go. So from a skeletal standpoint, that's where I've got to change him to go ahead and flop that pair. I think another good steer that we have coming around the corner in the yellow one, this is a big outline steer that's got a nice look to him at the standstill. For me, we need to lay him back in the angle of his shoulder. He gets just a little too straight up front. He, too, is just a little hard-bodied for the extra frame and extra grow that he has. We need to knock him down in his frame size, and we need to drop him in his body and see him just a little softer back there through his midrib and flank. And biggest thing is we get him in motion too stilty up front. Really nice steer just in terms of feedability coming out next. Big ribbed, and he's soft-centered, and that steer's real flexible. We get a show halter on him and get him out here to the side of him. I just wish he had a little more balance to him. He's a little plain up front. He's got just a little extra chest to him. Rounder out of his hip, he's frailer in his hind leg and wants to hook it up underneath himself. So just a lot of aesthetic things that we need to change in him from a balance standpoint to go ahead and work him up a spot or two higher. Another calf that resembles him, this young man told me that he had both of these calves, and I think they're very, very similar in where they're good. This is another good feeding steer that's real flexible. He's just a little lighter weight and not quite as far along in his degree of finish as his other one that goes out ahead of him. As we work on down, here's a steer that has some rib and he has some body. He just needs more muscle, he needs more bone, and he needs more stoutness. And then the steer that we're going to round out our class with, he's got a pretty good shape right in behind his shoulder. For me, skeletally, we've got to see him just a little bit sounder, especially off of his rear too, to go ahead and work him up any higher. But a good class of them there. I thought a really, really nice set of them. Congratulations to those exhibitors.
Winning the class is Grayson Slaybaugh. Second place was Alyssa Williams. Earning blue ribbons are Kane Geddes, Kaiser Harris, and Kaiser Harris's second steer. Earning red ribbons were Mava Cortice and Peter Minnick. Just a reminder, cattle team fitting participants meet at the covered arena at 5:30. Cattle team fitting participants meet at the covered arena at 5:30. This is Class 4, our final class of FFA market steers. First in the ring, we have Lila Heineman from Medical Lake, Peter Cannon from Pomeroy, Peter Cannon's second steer, Katie Bellis from Liberty FFA, Emma Heineman from Medical Lake FFA, Colby Ledgerwood from Pomeroy FFA, and Emmett Nivatin from Connell FFA. This is your fourth and final class of FFA market beef.
Well, as we round out our steer show here in the heaviest class of the day, a good class of them to end on. I think a really good set of steers that we've got up here on the top end. And for me, probably a little closer between the initial trio as they sort up. And I think all three of them are really nice. And really the one that's going to go ahead and win for me is just kind of a compromise of the things that I like of the ones that are coming in behind him. I think that steer, he's got muscle and he's got shape and represents I do think the two stouter cattle are coming in 1 and 2 with just a little more expression whenever you go in and get your hands on them. I think those are both impressive steers that are coming out in 1 and 2 and probably represents a little softer body type, a little easier feeding look compared to the one in second, and probably resembles that more the third steer. So the things that I like about the cattle that are coming in 2 and 3, I think our class winner does that and probably blends those two things together and makes him the balanced steer that we have in here. Whenever we get him in motion, we could probably change him just a little bit in the way that he handles his hind leg. He's a little tight, he's a little rigid in his hock and his rear ankle, but still, that's a really nice steer that's got muscle, he's got look, he's a little softer bodied and a little easier feeding looking than the one that's coming in behind him. So for me, that's the balanced one to go ahead and lead off. I think 2 and 3 are close because they're very opposite in their advantages that they have out here. Whenever you talk about shape and cutability and just red meat yield, those are things that I really like about our second place steer. That steer is incredibly good in his shape up high. There is not one in here pound for pound that's got any more muscle or has any more shape. Now, I wish he probably combined that with just a little smoother look from the profile. He's a little rougher down his top line. He's not as good where he hooks up in behind his shoulder. He gets a little rounder out of his hip, and his hind leg is a bit uncoordinated whenever we get him in motion. But I still like his extra shape. I like his advantage in muscle and cutability compared to the one that's coming in behind him. The young man steer that's coming out here in 3, moderate, big-bodied, really easy feeding. I think this young man told me he was just a shade over 1,500, and he's been awesomely fed, and you've done a great job getting him finished because he is very smooth and he is very uniform, and where he stands right there, that guy is worth a lot of money, and you're going to like your check that you get back out of that calf, I promise you that. My problem with him is he's a little plainer shape than the two that go out ahead of him. That steer's just a little bit flat-footed from behind and just kind of walks like a duck on his rear skeleton, for lack of better terminology to describe that. He needs to be just a little more consistent and more athletic in the way that he uses his hip and hind leg. But again, that steer is a really nice kind of a fat steer that's awesome-bodied. He's big, heavyweight steer that's really nicely finished. Like I said, that steer's worth a lot of money standing right there where he's at. The Hereford steer that's coming out here next, that's a really heavyweight steer. That's another one that's big-ribbed and big-bodied, too plain in his shape up high. That steer of our top 4, he's the plainest in the shape that he's got over his rib, his lower body balance, the way he sits in his chest, the way that he comes out of his hip. He's a little too round and just a little too awkward in the way that he handles his hind leg. We need to see more balance and design and more expression in him to work him up a spot or two. Here's a steer that I like his profile just a little bit better. He's stronger in his top line balance, but for me, his lower body doesn't sit in him quite as good because he's a little shallower. Back to his flank, that steer needs just a little more muscle whenever you get right in behind him. I'd like to power him up just a little bit in regard to his center and lower quarter and stifle. As we work on down, here's another steer coming out that's a smooth steer that's really good in his finish. We need to see him balance a bit better from the side, and his hip and his hind leg doesn't work quite as well, and he's a little flat. And then the steer that we're going to round out our class with, he's sound and he's long-bodied. That steer for me just needs more muscle to go ahead and work up. He is the flattest one, and he's the plainest in his shape in here. But hey, did a great job showing. Congratulations on a strong way to end us out here in a tough class. Congratulations to those exhibitors. If you would, put your hands together for them as they work their way out.
First place goes to Colby Ledgerwood. Second place to Peyton Cannon. Also earning purple ribbon is Emmett Niveton. Earning blue ribbons are Lila Heineman, Peyton Canyon on his second steer, Katie Bellis, and Emma Heineman. Next, we're going to move into our championship drive of our FFA market steers. Into the ring we have Colby Ledgerwood. Katie Bellis. Grayson Slaybaugh. and Colby Ledgerwood's second steer. Those are your P1 purple ones. Our P2s are Olivia Wicks, Molly Warren, Alyssa Williams, and Peyton Cannon. These are your purple ones and purple twos. Championship Drive FFA market steers.
Well, just like our 4-H show before, I thought our FFA Market Steer Show came together really nicely, and I really like our class winners and second places that we bring back out here for our lineup. And we worked through a lot of good cattle that we had here in our FFA show today, and I thought all of them really represented good kinds as we bring them back out here. And we ran a lot of cattle through here today, and I probably haven't mentioned this enough. I know I haven't mentioned it enough, but we've had a great set of ring help and an awesome set of people behind the scenes that have been putting this show on. And I'll tell you what, I get to go around and do a lot of shows in a year's time, and it makes my job really easy and really nice getting to work with great people that keep things running smooth. And so if you would, around ringside, let's put our hands together in appreciation for everybody that made this thing happen. I can promise you, if you've ever put on a show, you don't get as many thanks as you do complaints, and they really deserve a lot of praise for what they're doing for you this weekend. All species running 4 rings, and it's been a really impressive show. Really over here, I know I haven't seen any of the other species, but I've been really impressed with the cattle side of things as I've gotten to work through an awesome set of heifers, really good set of prospect steers, and a good set of market steers on both the 4-H and FFA divisions. And we'll talk a little bit about our class winners. We'll get you a champion in reserve, and we'll rank all of our purple ribbon winners here for sale order here in just a second. But I thought we started off really nicely. They're in class 1 with a really nice market heifer, and that was the only market heifer that we had, and so she's going to be named our automatic champion market heifer. But hey, if we're just going to have one, at least she's really nice. And I thought that one was a really comfortable winner there in that class. I thought there was 2 stouter cattle that we had coming out in 1 and 2, and this one combined that with just a little more balance and just a little little more quality from the side. I thought her joint work and skeleton was also an advantage to that one over there, and I thought really set the tone nicely for cattle that blend balance and look and shape and muscle and are still correct on their feet and legs. Really set the tone nicely for the rest of our three classes. The gray steer that wins that second class, that was a good class of them, and to work through that class was a little more challenging because each one of those steers up on the top end, I really, really like some things about, and there was each one of them I'd like to change a little something about, but ultimately landed on this one. I like his look, and I like his design from the side. He's really long-necked. He's good in his top line balance. He's good in his feet and leg structure, and he's probably not as just chubby-bellied and as big-ribbed as some of these other cattle that we've got out here, and probably not ideal for me and my type and my kind that I've been going for all day, because I have been picking them just a little bit bigger ribbed and a little huskier middle. But I'll tell you what, I was kind of surprised, and I was pretty impressed with this steer's handle, because he hooks up with a great shape behind his shoulder over his rib, and he's pretty stout out of his hips. So even though he's not the deepest, that steer's got a great turn up high, and he's still got a neat look to him, and he's still good in his feet and leg structure. The painted up steer that comes out of that next class, there was a good pair of them in there that I thought sorted up pretty quickly. I like this steer's moderation, and he does probably hit my type in terms of his body and his rib design a little bit more as we compare him to some of our other class winners. That steer's really comfortable on his feet and legs. He's square built. He's good balance. That steer's got muscle working down his top and out of his hip, and he combines that with a really nice balanced look from the side. Whenever you talk about a blend of good things, fundamentally, he's good ribbed, he's good bodied, he's got an easy feed and fast steer look to him, he's muscular, he's still sound, and he's still good in his balance from the side. I think he kind of checks a lot of boxes. I know that's a popular term that a lot of judges are using, to go through and just check the boxes. I think that fits him. He does a nice job with that. Maybe not overwhelming in any one area, but a pretty solid steer there that wins Class 3. As we work down to Class 4, our heavyweight class, that was a good class of them too. Good trio of them that came to the forefront of that class. I like this steer because I thought he was the combination steer of those three. I thought he was a really good looking one that still had power, that still had shape. I thought the two steers that came out of that heavyweight class were the two stouter ones. I like this one's look, and I like his design from the profile just a little bit better. We talked about needing to make him just a little sounder from behind, and if I'm going to criticize him, that's where I'm going to do it out here in this lineup. But again, rounds off a really good set of class winners there in our heavyweight class. Like I said, I like all four of them a lot. I like all four of them over there along the far side, and I'll tell you what, there was a lot of cattle that were really good kind of cattle that didn't make it back in here, and I just think that speaks to the depth, the quality of your show, and the cattle that your young people have presented out here today. If you would, around ringside, let's congratulate all of them real quick, and we'll get you a champion, and we'll rank all of them for sale order here in our purple group. Congratulations to you guys on a nice job. I've been thoroughly impressed here in our FFA market show.
Your grand champion is Grayson Slaybaugh or Pomeroy. And your reserve champion is Alyssa Williams from Lynn Ritzville. Colby Ledgerwood's in third place. And Colby Ledgerwood in fourth place. Peter Cannon in 5th place. Oh, come back, come back. Katie Bellis in 5th place. Peyton Cannon in 6th place. Molly Warren in 7th place. Olivia Wicks in 8th place. Emmett Kniveton in 9th place. Jack Baser in 10th place, and Reagan Soliday in 11th place. That's your championship drive, FFA Market Beef. Well, don't run off, folks. We're going to let the grand champions get some pictures taken, and then we're on to our next class, the Pee Wee class. Got some little kids with big animals, so stick around and watch our future showmen come in the ring.